Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to the World Rapid Chess Championship in 2019 in Moscow. So we have now the best players battling 15 rounds in this Swiss format. Magnus Carlsen is participating also in this very nice tournament. We have Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who is the second best rated player now today in this rapid format, and I really like this rapid format because we have many mistakes. The games are not so clear. We have many tactical games, and I think this is really maybe the future of chess, this rapid format, because sometimes these players get too prepared and we have many draws in this tournament. So of course we don't want to see draws, we want to see winning games. So 2 rounds have been played so far in this tournament. Magnus Carlsen managed to get a win and a draw, and today in the round 3 he faced a very strong grandmaster, Boris Savchenko, and let's see now what happened. Here Magnus played with the white pieces. So I'll show also some standings after many rounds. Maybe after 5 or 6 rounds we'll see the current standings so far. I think Levon Aronian and Wang Hao have 2 points, so they have a perfect score so far. They're still playing their game. So let's see here what happened. Magnus with the white pieces, d4. Boris Savchenko answered here with d5, and now knight to f3. A little bit funny move by Magnus Carlsen, not going into the common c4 move. That leaves now Savchenko the opportunity to go directly aggressive here with the move c5, going into sort of a Tarash setup. Here Magnus played a calm move, e3, a simply developing move, and here d takes c4 played by Savchenko. And maybe a better idea, if your opponent has allowed you the space control that you have created as black, maybe a better way I think is simply to proceed with knight to f6 after something like bishop to e2, knight to c6, and I don't know, maybe something like e6. We have a very nice powerful central control with our pawns. White would be forced to go into really this Tarash setup with the move c4 if White doesn't want to have here a too passive situation. So in the game after e3, Savchenko took c takes d4. We have e takes d4, and now knight to c6. Now bishop to b5, played by by Magnus Carlsen. Here, if you try c3 to fix the position, I think bishop to f5 here is a possibility for Boris Savchenko, because now in some occasions and in these types of arrangements we have sometimes the problems of the slide square bishop. Now the bishop is out, so it's a good continuation here for black. We can play again simply healthy move, knight to f6, e6, even bishop to d6 is here a possibility. So here after bishop to b5, bishop to g4 was played. We have now pinning idea for both sides. Here Magnus played this very annoying pin on the king, and here Savchenko also on the queen, and Magnus plays a very aggressive move now, c4. Magnus wants clarification here in the center. If something happens, maybe something like d takes c4, then we have also some d5 possibilities. Simply go pass through with our opponent using our very annoying pin here. In the game after c4, knight to f6 was played by Savchenko, and now knight to c3. And here Savchenko makes, I think, a slightly inaccuracy. He plays the move g6, not challenging the center immediately. Maybe a better way is maybe to proceed even with d takes c4 here. If d5, then I think we can play this move a6, kicking with the bishop after something like bishop to c6, b takes c6. Here queen to a4 is a possibility, but now simply bishop to f3 I think solves the situation, because now you have to take g takes f3, and now rook to c8. After something like d takes c6, I don't think that's a problem. We can play simply queen to c7 and simply e6. This pawn structure is simply too weak here in front of white king, so that's why I think it's playable here for black. Instead of this d takes c4, or at least you can try maybe something like e6 here, fix the position in the center, somehow battle against this pawn storm that Magnus Carlsen has created here in the center. At least you should have tried that. Here g6, not the most of accurate moves, and here Magnus plays simply h3, kicking with the bishop, because now the bishop doesn't have any more the g6 square to escape. That's why bishop takes f3, we have queen takes f3, and now a6, and most of us would probably retreat here, bishop to a4 and similar ideas, but Magnus Carlsen plays very aggressively. Continuation here, c takes d5. After knight takes d5, we have queen takes d5, and now of course a takes b5. But there is a problem now. Here Magnus simply took. If you try to take out the queen, that's not good, because we can simply take, and here after b takes a takes b5, then we have the fork on c7, so this would be game over for black. So that's why here possible continuation, a good continuation is here simply to take. A takes b5, and now Magnus simply took. Queen takes b5, and now bishop to g7, attacking here this d4 weakness. But there is a problem if you try queen to d4. Then again, it's not so good, because here queen to b7, you lose the rook in the next move. You can maybe try here queen to e5, a check, but bishop to e3 saves the situation. Now you either lose the knight here, or if you try something like queen to b8 to defend the rook, rook to c8 is not possible, because the queen is covering that square, so the rook wouldn't be protected. So now both of these pieces are hanging, and I think it's again game over here for black. So that's why after bishop to g7 simply played, and Magnus simply took another pawn, and now we have knight to d4. If we evaluate the position, we see that white has now 5 pawns, black has only 4 pawns, but I think black has a better activity here, which is the most important thing. And we have now a similar position. If you're familiar with the Benko gambit opening, sometimes from black's perspective, you're giving up some pawns in order to have a great attack here on the A and B file. Now it's a similar position. Of course, the Benko gambit wasn't played, but it reminds me really of this Benko gambit setup. Now black will try simply castle, because black is faster in the development. Magnus Carlsen has here the problems with the bishop on c1, has also then a weak pawn on b2, so here you have to be careful, because now black will launch a very aggressive attack against the queen. First you have to also secure the queen and somehow develop the bishop, because it's not so easy to develop the bishop on c1. Many tactical threats are here possible for black. So in the game, castling played by Magnus Carlsen, Savchenko also castled, and now we have rook to d1, of course getting the rook on the same file like the knight, and here queen to b8. Here Savchenko offers the trades of queens. If you take here the queen, then you see rook from f to b8, and now I'm not seeing a clear way how you should proceed here for white, because every pawn move, basically here b3 is the problem, then you get pinned here by the bishop. If you try here something like a3, then knight on b3 is a possibility. Again, you see, if you try a4, the same idea happens. So this is really a Benko gambit setup here that Savchenko has played, and here it's not so easy for Magnus Carlsen to find the best moves. Here after queen to b8, Magnus tried queen to e4. If you try queen to e7, this is also risky, because then you get rook to e8, and if you try something like queen to h4 to escape, then you see the problems of this very powerful activity of black here. Knight to c2, you have to play with your rook on b1, and now bishop to c3 is this tactical possibility that black can play here. So of course you cannot take, because your rook is hanging. So tricky stuff here, also prepared by this very strong grandmaster Savchenko. Here Magnus simply retreated with the queen to e4, relying on his extra pawn. You have to be careful, as I said, but here queen to e4, a perfect move, and Magnus continues simply with the slightly advantage here. So f5, Savchenko simply uses now the tempos. We have queen to d3 and now e5, and the main idea now for black is to play e4, and again somehow maybe create some further weaknesses here on c3 or b2. You see, again I'm pointing out these pawn moves are not possible in the game. Rook to b1 played by Carlsen, and now queen to b4, and this is now Savchenko's, I think, main mistake. Queen to b4 is a little bit too passive. Maybe rook to c8 is simply better. After something like bishop to g5, then we can play on the main idea e4. After something like, I don't know, queen to d2, we have really some great tactical possibilities. Maybe even try knight to b5, finally liberating the diagonal for the star square bishop and attacking the knight. Then this a2 pawn is also hanging. Instead of that, queen to b4 was played, not activating the rook. I think you have to play much more active here from Black's perspective. Here after queen to b4, it leaves now Magnus the opportunity to regroup a little bit. It gives him time, an extra tempo sort of, which is very important now in this setup. Here after bishop to e3, rook from f to d8 was played, but it's not the same position anymore because now Magnus can play simply a3, kicking away the queen, and now after queen to b3, Magnus simply took out the knight. A very important move because the knight was centralized. The knight was on a very active square here. After bishop takes d4, we have rook takes d4. E takes d4 is not such a good idea because we can try simply knight to b5. Another problem, we can create always a blockade against this advanced pawn. This pawn is not something that you have to bother because we can really create a very nice blocking system. In the next moves we can double up rooks or similar ideas, still continue with our two pass pawns on the queen side, so this will be, I think, a favorable game for white. So in the game, rook to d4 was played, and now Magnus simply offers the trades of queens. We have rook to b8, here queen to c5, again maybe a slight inaccuracy here also by Magnus. Here maybe now rook from b to d8 is a better move for Savchenko, but Savchenko again offered the trades of queens, trying to simplify the position, which is not good. I think if you want to play more active, you have to stay with your pieces on the board. And Magnus simply took out the queen, rook takes c4, and now knight to d5. Now Magnus liberates, at least for a while now. This knight is not under such a pressure. Of course, in the next move, Savchenko will try the move e4 and liberating finally this diagonal. In the game, rook to b3, you see how great this Benko setup. It's not a Benko gambit I'm pointing again out, but it really reminds me of this very aggressive opening of blacks. Now after rook to b3, Savchenko creates a very nice blocking system, not allowing to move these pawns further, because if these pawns are rolling, this b pawn, a pawn, this would be very dangerous. Connecting two pass pawns maybe on the 5th or 6th rank would be game over for black here, so that's why this rook to b3, a perfect blockade here. Rook to d2 played by Magnus. We have e4, finally liberating this diagonal for the bishop, and here Magnus simply played the move g3. King to f7, we are basically in an endgame stage, so that's why it's very good to play actively with your king. Here king to g2, and now rook to d4. This is a correct move now by Savchenko. Now it's good to trade off the rooks because we want to deflect this rook from the defense of this b2. We want to take this b2 pawn, and now Magnus finds a very nice defensive system. He plays rook to d1. He will give up the pawn just in order to have this pass pawn, and here rook takes d2, we have rook to d2, and now bishop to b2, but now we have this pass pawn. The rook is a little bit stuck to the defense of this bishop to b2, so you have to lose another tempo. Bishop to e5 played by Savchenko, and now you have this extra tempo. You have rook to a2. Now this pawn is supported and it can roll, but still this position is about equal because Savchenko played the correct move here. He played king to e6. You have to activate your king because this pawn is very, very dangerous. Knight to f4, and here maybe Savchenko should have taken here this knight. Bishop takes f4 is a possibility. After g takes f4, king to d6, you see you can catch up with this pawn, and after something like h4, we can simply go after this pawn, take it out, and go very fast with our king back, because we would then have this 4-on-3 situation, and it's very hard here for white to create a pass pawn. So Magnus will need also many moves in order to make something happen. I think in the next couple of moves Savchenko could have saved the situation, but instead of that he played simply king to d6, continuing to activate his king further to the queen side and try to prevent this pawn from promotion. Here a5 was played. We have bishop to d4, and now a6. Magnus simply continues to push, tries to deflect all of black's pieces on the queen side, and maybe he can try make something here, but still the evaluation here simply is 0.0, so it's an equal game. But I wanted to point you out also that Savchenko had here like 10 seconds on the clock, so it was um, maybe little bit too, he was under too much time pressure, I think. Here after a6, here he continues to play the correct move, bishop to a7. We have h4 and now e3, which is also a good move, trying to undermine here the pawn structure of whites, getting as many of this pawn as off the board, because one of the main ideas is of course to trade off all of these pawns and then go into an endgame in which maybe Carlsen has this extra pawn, but then we can grab it and we could go into an endgame with the rook and the bishop against the rook and the knight, and this would be of course a theoretical draw. So this would be an endgame idea here for Savchenko, but now Magnus simply took f takes e3, rook takes e3, and now rook to d2. And you see now how Magnus will play this very, very nice endgame here. Here after rook to d2, rook to king to c6 was played, still a good move here by Savchenko. We have rook to c2, we have rook to d6, and now Magnus goes behind. This is the so-called Tarrasch rule in endgames. When you play endgames, you want to have your rook behind your own pawn, so it means like you have it on a2, a3, a4, so you want to have the support of this a6 pawn, but you want to have also your rook behind your enemy's pawns. You're trying basically get behind and grab all of these pawns. So that's why here Savchenko had to be careful. He played now the correct move, rook to e7, staying with his rook on this very important rank, because there is our cornerstone of this pawn chain that black has built here. So far Savchenko has created a blocking system. This pawn cannot move further. It doesn't have any support by any pieces, so this would be a theoretical draw. But now Magnus continues. King to h3, bishop to e3, and now rook to d8, king to c7, attacking the rook, and now rook to d3, attacking the bishop. We have bishop takes f4, g takes f4, and now king to b6, and now Magnus plays of course rook to a3. We have king to a7, and now h5. A very tricky move here by Magnus. If you take, of course, g takes h5, then you have three weaknesses. All of these pawns would be a target of Magnus Carlsen's king. So that's why rook to e4 was played. Here Savchenko tries to attack another pawn, and here Magnus played rook to f3, giving up the pawn. But this king is really far away. Now Savchenko of course took. We have rook to h4. Here king to b6. Magnus simply goes king to g5, rook to e6. Also the correct move here by Savchenko. And now rook to c3 played by Magnus Carlsen, simply cutting off this file for the king. And here rook to d6 was played. Magnus continued with h6, and now rook to c6 was played by Savchenko, rook to e3. And here Savchenko makes the main mistake in the game. He has to play rook to c7 in order to prevent Magnus Carlsen to jump with a rook here on e7 and grab this pawn. Here Savchenko makes the main mistake. I think Savchenko will have c7 nightmares here. He played the move rook to c4, and this is now game over basically, because now Magnus Carlsen has rook to e7, attacking the pawn. Here you have this rook to c7 idea, but now Magnus can go rook to g7. Even with the pawn down, here white has a completely winning endgame. If we take, of course, then we can simply take h takes g7 and promote the queen. That's why king to c6, Magnus played very accurate. Now king to f6, we have rook to d7, king to e6, we have rook to d4 attacking this pawn, but now Magnus simply took, rook takes f4, and now rook to h8. Then there is this problem now for the king, because you always have to have this king at least on this b file, because if you try something like c7, then we can push. If you here try rook to h4, then we can go here behind rook to a8, and if you take, then you get rook to h7 and you lose the rook here on h7. So that's why here in this particular position Savchenko had to go here with the king to b7, not allowing this scenario, rook to a8 and then rook to a7. And here Magnus simply goes with this king very actively. You have to push the pawn here on f4. Here Magnus takes another pawn, rook to g4, but it's game over. King to h5, rook to g1, and in this position, after rook to f8, Boris Savchenko resigned, because let's see the possible continuation. You can try here maybe this check, but now here you can try another check, but I think here you have to play something like rook to h1, and now we can simply promote to h8. If you takes, and now we can catch up with this pawn, and this is game over. Okay, great game. I think Savchenko played aggressively against Magnus, but this main mistake here, let's go back here, this not to play this rook to c7 move. Here Savchenko played rook to c4, and Magnus Carlsen uses this moment immediately and goes into favorable endgame. Great endgame technique also by Magnus Carlsen, because Savchenko should have gone for a draw here. Maybe he saw some winning ideas, I'm not sure, but as I said, he was low on time, so he faced the best player in the world, so okay, he can still play, I think, a great tournament. After 3 rounds, Magnus Carlsen has now 2.5 points. We'll see what will happen. So far, Magnus has won all of his games with the white pieces, and meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games with some more tournaments. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.